Interesting background. I see a chicken and a dog in your background. Pictures of a chicken and a dog, and looks like
these are charts for teaching my children.
Oh yes,
these
okay.
Are charts, yeah, for teaching my children. They can see the lion, the apple, radio. Yeah, they're just for children in lower grades of school.
Okay, that's wonderful. Looks good. Now,
Yeah.
are the words you're teaching them? Are you teaching them the English or?
You can see the queen, man.
Oh, where's the queen? Oh, I see the queen. Yeah.
The
Oh,
queen
I
right
see.
here.
N is for net.
Yeah, my
Okay.
dad.
Hi, family. You've got a big
Hello.
family over there. Everybody's
Yes,
taking part in
yes.
this conversation.
Hello.
Hi. What's your name?
Hello.
Hello.
Kuuliza jina. Kuja hapa
What-
kuambia jina.
What is your
Ambia
name?
jina.
Come over and let
Yeah.
me say hello to you.
Haya.
Hi. Bella?
Sema Caleb.
Yeah. Here, my name is Meta Spencer. What's your name? Huh?
Caleb. Yeah, his name is Caleb.
Caleb?
Okay.
Oh, very good. Are you a
Yes.
pastor?
Right.
Mr. Davidson is
Yes.
you're a pastor.
Yes. I'm a minister with the Mennonite Church in Kenya.
You're a Mennonite? Is that what you
Yes,
said?
I'm a Mennonite.
Mennonite. Well, very
Right.
good. We've got a lot of Mennonites in Canada.
That's interesting, huh?
Adam, are you part Mennonite background?
My mom's family, so my grandmother's family was Mennonite and founded what basically is Waterloo district. We drive around, all the streets there are named after ancestors of mine. So you drive along, you see Herb Street, for example. I'm related to the Herbs and the Fritzes.
Mhm.
All right.
Uh-huh.
Well, here's
Sure.
a bunch of other people here. Here comes Robert Reed, good old Robert Reed. He's a faithful. And here's Richard Denton, bless your heart.
Robert Reed, Richard Denton's friend from Halifax.
Oh, you know Richard.
Hey everyone.
Namaste. How are you, Andre?
Hello, Meta. Hello, Reverend Senpai.
Mm-hmm. I think we can get down and talking about whatever is on our minds.
There's one matter of the small modular reactors that
Mhm.
four conservative premiers got together about with a memorandum of understanding in April, and seemed to be received with some acceptance by the Prime Minister and the Minister of the Environment. And I have a little collection I've developed on 1 or 2 pages, just depending on the size of print, of 10 reasons why these modular reactors should not be developed and produced.
If you want to start off by reading a few of your good reasons why not to have small modular reactors, I'm happy to give you the floor.
Oh, give me about 15 seconds to get it in front of me.
Sure. Okay. Fine.
The Nobel laureates 2 weeks ago issued, and this wasn't just the peace laureates, it was a list of all the laureates. They issued an urgent call to action. Well, where's the action? Yes,
I haven't even seen that, Andre. That's very disturbing right there. That if all of the laureates get together and make a statement and we don't even hear it, that's not a good sign.
Exactly.
One is the danger of explosions like those of Chernobyl and Fukushima. Although the reactors are smaller and safer, these will still continue to happen. They will occur if they're built. The high cost, actually, compared with wind, solar, and hydro, although they say they're smaller, so they're cheaper than big nuclear reactors, but they will cost more per kilowatt hours generated than the large ones. The huge carbon imprint of building them, because so much cement is needed, so that they'll actually, with the cement, create more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere for a year or two before they finally catch up and contribute. the dangers of transporting the radioactive materials and storing the used materials somewhere. So we're up to a half a dozen of those lists of the list already. And finally, the materials can be used to make nuclear weapons. If SMRs are exported to or built in other countries, which is what the Premier of Alberta says he'd like to do with new uranium mines and export it. If that happens, they can be used, that uranium can be used to produce plutonium and from it nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. And most importantly, the nuclear power plants are not necessary. Projections are that the wind, solar, and hydro, particularly the solar, will be able to supply the energy we need, not to need the fossil fuels by 2050.
All right, that's a good list. That's a terrific list. Now I can add a little bit, which is that about a week ago, or maybe, I don't know, much more than a week, around a week ago, I did a talk show with two guys who were experts. And you can find them if you go to our website, to savetheworld.ca, and then you click on the thing saying videos, then up toward near the top, you'll find the one, I think the guy's name is Michael, oh Lord, I can't think of his last name. Barnard is one of them, and the other guy's named Paul Martin. And Paul Martin is in the business of making small modular pilot projects for energy companies, not nuclear. But he says from his experience that it does cost more to produce small ones than big ones. That the reason they started off with small reactors originally, or smaller anyway than now, and they got them bigger and bigger because it was cheaper to make one big one than 2 or 3 small ones. So he says for sure these things are not going to be cheaper; they're going to be more expensive, and they're not going to be safer either in terms of various kinds of safety issues. They're not going to be any more reliable. So those are the two main points they made. And I think it's really a useful conversation because these two guys are looking at things from the standpoint of companies that might be actually building installations, power plants and things. And they know a thing or two about how the financing and the safety features and all of what it takes to create such a thing. And if they say it's not going to work, it's not a good idea, then I think people maybe ought to pay attention to them. So thank you all for your contribution, Robert. And Richard, do you have anything to add on this point? Because you are very much a nuclear safety oriented person, very worried about the exposure to radiation.
Well, I fully agree with everything that Robert has said. I think that when you're looking at nuclear power, again, there's sort of two approaches. It's part of, it's described as an inalienable right in the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. So a lot of countries want nuclear power even though they don't want nuclear weapons. But as Robert has pointed out, they provide the proponents and the intellectual technology to develop nuclear weapons. And so that was the problem with India. We gave them our CANDU reactor and taught them all about nuclear power, and then they developed their nuclear weapons from that. And of course, Canada is still giving them uranium, which goes to nuclear power, but it frees up India's own uranium that goes directly to nuclear weapons and is not under the auspices of the IAEA. So that is.
Well, hold on. Canada had an understanding that none of our uranium anymore is to go to weapons. Is that not true?
Well, that is correct. But Canada is sending uranium to India, which it has not signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty.
Mhm.
And so Canada's uranium is going to their nuclear power, but India itself has some uranium, which then can be used for nuclear weapons. And that uranium is not supervised by the International Atomic Energy Agency. So by Canada sending uranium to India, that frees up India's own uranium for nuclear weapons.
All right. Mhm. Okay. I hadn't thought of that, but it's an obvious point that that might be the case. Yeah.
I have a
Okay.
question for Robert and Richard, perhaps.
Yeah.
And that is the question of storage, because once the depleted uranium is no longer used for generating power, you've got to store it, and you've got to store it for many, many years. The last I recall was it's over 150 years, and monitoring and who's going to be responsible for looking after the those depleted uranium stocks over several, over a century or so.
Actually, numbers 5 and 6 on my list are 5, impossibility of 10,000 years of safe storage of used and discarded radioactive waste. And number 6 is the impossibility of 10,000 years of safe storage of tailings waste at uranium mining sites.
Now, we're not talking 100 years, Shabir, we're talking thousands.
Well, I was trying to be conservative.
Yeah, I think though we can get rid of some of the depleted by uranium by shooting it at our enemies as bunker busting bombs and that sort of thing. But you're correct. Here in Canada, we're trying to bury it in a hole in the ground, deep geological repositories. They tried that in Germany. They put it into salt mines and then it melted through the salt. And now they have no idea where the uranium is in the salt mines. There's a number of other countries that are trying to bury it. In Canada, our expert is Gordon Edwards, who wants to do what's called a revolving surveillance. So the idea is that instead of putting it into a hole in the ground and out of sight, out of mind, you keep it on the surface and keep monitoring it there. And so this will, again, force hopefully the closure of nuclear power, because the waste will keep accumulating. It'll keep accumulating on the surface. You'll have to watch it all the time. Hopefully it doesn't become a target for terrorists. And so that's the idea, is to keep it in people's mind by keeping it on the surface and just observing it and hopefully making sure that an accident doesn't happen.
It's not just uranium that's coming out of these reactors. It's a whole mess of stuff. What they are liable to do is use some of this junk to make a dirty bomb. You put some of this soupy junk in connect it to a real ordinary bomb, an explosive like TNT or something, and set it off in downtown Toronto or someplace and watch the fun. Am I right, Richard?
Yes.
All right. So I just wanted to get that off my chest. Okay, who else wants to talk? I see Erica Simpson's dog. Erica, does your dog want to speak? Its hand is up.
I've got my different email there. That is my dog, I'm sorry to say. It's Erica Simpson. I'm a professor of international politics at the University of Western Ontario. I don't know many of you. I actually have written a lot of refereed articles on underground nuclear waste disposal and the concept of rolling stewardship, which Richard was just explaining, that was first put forward by Dr. Gordon Edwards in Montreal. And that's the idea that rather than bury the waste and then abandon the shaft that is built, that we would keep it above ground And because there is no successful underground waste depository, the one in Germany, the Assa mine has leaked. It was a salt mine. The Yucca Mountain is still being examined and is not likely to go ahead in Texas. People are looking at two types of depositories in Canada. One would be at Teeswater, which is just about in the middle of Ontario, or in northern Ontario at Ignace. And that would be for the high-level nuclear waste, which would include all of the plutonium, the uranium, the high-level core rods. And then there would have to be a different depository because of terrorism and so on that would also be underground, and that would be for the what's called the mid-level and low-level nuclear waste. So they emphasize that there's far more low-level waste like laboratory coats, all sorts of equipment, construction machines, and so on. That would all be in a very large depository. And the proposed site for that, which I fought for 10 years, was under the Bruce reactor, which is the largest operating nuclear reactor in the world. And so the proposal was to build a huge site, 7 kilometers long, underneath the reactor right on the shores of Lake Huron. But we won that. We won that huge fight, and they have canceled that proposition. And now they have no alternative. All they know is they do need to do something with the waste. So this is obviously very interesting to me. And if you want to learn more, just send me an email. I've written about 10 opinion pieces on it. So I can send you something short, or I can send you something that's 20,000 words long and very detailed. So I hope that's enough, Meta. You asked me to speak, and I'm happy to speak. I'm going to lower my hand now.
Everybody should pay attention to Erica whenever she speaks. All right.
Thank you, Meta.
All right. Who else?
My dog is there because I'm in my car, and that's my car and my dog. Thank you very much. So nice to see so many people from Kenya. I'm really pleased and impressed, and Philadelphia and Meta. You know, we gave Meta a Lifetime Achievement Award earlier this month in June. And a plaque and some flowers, and an association called the Canadian Peace Research Association awarded her the 2021 Lifetime Achievement Award, not just for what she's doing with the videos, but for all of her publications and her many, many contributions to Peace Magazine, to her work as a professor in sociology at the in Toronto, and also her work as a professor emeritus. So, you know, Meta, you've been just the most fantastic contributor to peace research. So
Honey,
wonderful.
you can be my publicity agent anytime. You are the winner for that. I'm really extremely grateful to you because I know you orchestrated this. And I would have to say, you know, Erica's been the president of this outfit, this CPRA this year. And it must have been the worst time in the world to agree to be the president with all of the kerfuffle that goes with organizing the annual meeting. You know, that it was a huge challenge. I would have thought you'd be still off with your head under the cover someplace trying to recover. But I'm glad you're back with us.
Well, no, I'm recovering, and you know, we have a lot of people to thank, including you, Meta. And it was a great conference. We had 71 speakers, and 25 of those were very high-profile keynote speakers, including Meta, that you can still view until the end of July online. So drop me a line if you're interested in that as well. So they're everybody from Guy Roberts, the deputy, he's now the former defense secretary who was in charge of the nuclear posture review under Trump, to Jonathan Granoff, Alan Ware, obviously Meta Spencer, many Canadians that are active on nuclear waste.
Can you give us a summary of what Guy Roberts said? Because I wasn't able to go to find the time at that moment to listen to him.
Yeah.
And I was curious about what kind of angle he would take.
He had a 30-minute, very coherent defense of deterrence and of the need to modernize the United States' entire nuclear stockpile. So if you ever want to watch a guy. He was also in charge of NATO's, he was the top senior person at NATO for the United States, and also he was in charge of their weapons of mass destruction program. So he's extremely coherent. I can share the video that he did because I don't want to summarize a 30-minute analysis, but it was very persuasive if you want to be persuaded that we have to modernize and rely on the U.S. nuclear deterrent. If you want to take that argument, which I do not, he provides perhaps the most coherent, him and Christopher Ford, who was under Trump, the U.S. Special Representative for Nuclear Nonproliferation, who's opposed to the NPT. Those two guys are very strong NATO defenders and very strong defenders of deterrence.
Tell us his name again and how to see the 30-minute.
Yeah.
Who's
So
talking right now?
don't put it in the chat because it won't show that well. Read it aloud. And
I can't put it in the chat. You have to email me, and then I have to know who you are, and then I'll let you have access to the Google Drive. But I'm not allowed to release it until the end of July because of the Congress copyright rules. So just Simpson at UWO, which is short for University of Western Ontario.ca. I can't, I'll try and put it in the chat.
Well, in following along with the nuclear, a couple of weeks ago, Britain announced that they were expanding their nuclear arsenal by 30 to 40%. So it's just another example.
They make a promise that they will have no more than X number of missiles. They won't tell you how many they have. So they tell you, we will have no more than this number, but they raised that number. Now the question was then, well, did they have that many all along and they hadn't gotten rid of them? Or are they now saying, well, in fact, we're going to increase them? That was not clear. And I understand that you could not get them to answer that question. So now you're reporting that they've promised to increase it. If so, then I hadn't heard about that. Can we get some real facts on this? Tell me what you know, and then if somebody else has read this news, it's something that I have missed.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me, but I could bring up the article and share it on screen. But right at the moment, though, that wasn't my main point. It was just as an example of how the things are getting worse in the world. The refugee crisis because of climate. There was a new prediction that there's going to be global hunger is going to expand by millions and millions of people because of the climate. So, and then the displacement, they're going to be traveling to different places because of war, because of the climate, the oceans rising. We're going to lose our coastlines. Yes, there's an opportunity now to say, we don't want violence. And the Secretary General of the United Nations set a precedent that's being worked on, but now's the time to bring that to the forefront of the world. Because when COVID started, he realized that to address COVID properly, we need to devote our efforts and our funds to COVID, to stopping this. But even more importantly,
sorry, who is it you're talking about?
Oh, Secretary General Antonio Guterres of the United Nations. That ceasefire was the most profound action in the world, in my opinion. And we can seize upon that because right now the Secretary General is going to be starting his second term. It looks like that it's pretty much a shoo-in. And so that could be the perfect start for his second term, because when he first started, he said, oh, I want to make my focus on peace. But I think that call for the ceasefire was really saying that stopping war affects all issues. And it does. It affects the human rights, every single element that's out there. So if we could start a new global peace movement, that's what I'm proposing, that we can do that right now. But if we did, We need the people in every country to participate, or it's not going to work. We're not going to get rid of nuclear weapons. We're not going to stop war. We're not going to affect COVID if we don't all unite. And we can do it under one umbrella. But there's a caveat. I'm not asking everyone to drop their own cause and stop what they're doing and just work on this. No, the key is keep doing what you're doing, but at the same time, promote the mother movement, a global movement of nonviolence. Then the movement itself gains strength. I believe we're only one step away, and that's leadership. Get the leaders to be announcing this, not me. I'm a facilitator and a developer, like an author. Now the publisher has to come into play, and that's Guterres. And the leaders come together and they announce it. Then watch
you
what
want
happens.
Guterres to be our leader. Well, he's a good guy. I'll vote for Guterres. Anybody else?
There's power there. There's power.
Thank you so much, Andre.
I certainly support that. I think we need to look at the problem, and I think Meta, you had on your program Ward Wilson, who suggested that nuclear weapons are an unconscious threat to us, and they are sapping our hope away. And so you look at movies, books, videos, they're all about Armageddon and what's going to happen after a nuclear war. And people go around either killing others or trying to kill each other. So I fully agree, Andre, that nonviolence is the way to go. I agree with you that we need to all partner together. Rotary is 1.2 million people, and we're trying to convince them that peace should be our next venue after ridding the world of polio, which we have essentially done. There's 2 cases, one in Pakistan and one in Afghanistan, and that's the only cases in all of the whole world.
Currently, 2 sick people is all.
Exactly.
Wow. Good for you guys. I didn't know that. That's wonderful news.
So what we're now working with is to have a conference with the head of the International Committee of the Red Cross, which got the Nobel Peace Prize 3 times, to work with Antonio Guterres and also the head of Rotary, and to bring these people together to get rid of nuclear weapons. And so certainly I agree with you that I think ICAN, the International Campaign Against Nuclear Weapons, it was an excellent example of NGOs all coming together to get the states to come out together to come out with the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. So that partnership certainly worked. And I agree also with you that youth is the answer. I think the problem is that youth wants immediate things that they can do. And so the climate change, working on, not having plastics, looking at electric cars, looking at physical transportation, bicycles, etc., recycling, vegetarianism, all that sort of thing are good. But to me, where the bang for the buck is in the military. And we need to decrease our spending on military and also our intellectual abilities on developing and modernizing nuclear weapons and conventional weapons, and to put that into the global problems such as the climate, poverty, pandemics, and so many others, all of which Meta has listed in her 6 on how to save the world.
I started off by saying that the Nobel laureates have issued this urgent call, and there's many others that have been doing it. The elders, Ban Ki-moon issued a wake-up call to the world. At the doomsday clock, when it went to 100 seconds, Mary Robinson said, "This is urgent, and we need something that's not the usual thing to get to this. So I propose that because it's urgent, that there's a force out there that can bring everyone together because of the children. The children are the motivation, as I mentioned, but that force is the women of the world. If I propose that if they're the first to rise up and unite, then everyone else will follow. It's not to say that women have all the answers or that are going to solve all of our problems or that it's going to work even. But the women in the past year have been rising up all around the world. There was Women's March on Washington, which was 4 years ago already. But then there was the women that went to Korea and crossed the DMZ. Nobel laureates, and the woman from California, a Korean American, Christine Ahn, got women leaders together. There's the prototype right there. They're already united. And
you know what? We've only got 2 women here right now, and besides me, I think, Andre, you're on to something. We need to get some more women involved in here. I'd sure like to call on a woman next.
Sure.
If Ann Denton wants to speak, you get the floor, because I'm trying to find women to hold our own against all these male guys.
Well, just with regard to getting women's voices forward, I have been active in an organization for a number of years, over 25 years. It's the Ontario Women's Liberal Commission. And
say it again, the Ontario what?
The Ontario Women's Liberal Commission.
Is that part of the Liberal Party?
Yes. It's part both provincial and federal.
Okay.
And what we do, one of our goals is to get more women elected to provincial legislatures and to the federal parliament across the country. And to that end, we raise money, and therefore we're able to give each nominated female Liberal candidate a certain amount of money to defray their election expenses. And we also run seminars on skills, political skills, for how to hire a campaign manager, how to organize yourself, because women don't readily get involved in the political process. Some do at the local level in terms of being a school trustee and so on and so forth. But in part because of their family commitments, they are more reticent to run for political office if it's in Ottawa or if it's in Toronto and you happen to live in London, that kind of thing. It's hard to juggle. So we try to recruit women, make them aware. And I think that women's voices certainly are very important. But and Equal Voice is another organization that some may have heard of. Its main office
I haven't known that. That's a feminist organization?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
It's called Equal Voice. And they are nonpartisan. In other words, they're not linked to a particular party, but they do the same kinds of things. They run seminars to encourage women to run for public office at all different levels of government. They have seminars on how they can raise money, how they can get links into the community, how individuals can encourage other women to run. So in order to get women's voice out there, especially at the political level, which is important because it's a decision-making level, we need these grassroots organizations that help. So anyway, I think it's very important. And Andre Sheldon was talking, of course, about the role of women and so on in the voice of women. So I just add that as a supplement of something that does exist in Ontario and across Canada. And it's been up and running for.
Well, there are not many women here listening to you at the moment, but there will be when we put this up on YouTube and advertise it.
Of course.
Still, I've noticed one thing, that when I look at who looks at these shows, who watches them after they're uploaded and made available, it's about 70% 70% male.
Oh my.
Yeah, I don't know why women aren't watching these shows. I don't understand it. Maybe we're too busy cooking or something. I don't know. Okay, John, Mike McNamee.
I very much like what the previous woman speaker said. I can't remember her name. I met Judy Scrow of the Liberal Party a few years ago. I was in her riding for quite a while, and I had a couple of talks with her, and she seemed to like my idea for nuclear disarmament, that everybody should disarm, all the nations that have weapons should disarm at precisely the same time, under complete and absolute supervision by the UN and each other's scientists. Like that idea. And I strongly suspect that the present idea of, what's it called? This treaty that we have, which says they are illegal, is sort of like going down to jail in Finch, where my girlfriend lives, by the way, and telling those people down there pistols are illegal. They'll laugh all the way to the bank and rob it. Okay, well, I rest my case. I mean, why don't we have a treaty that means something? It's not new. It's been done many times before on a smaller scale. We've had all kinds of treaties that have been signed and observed and carried out, like reducing the number of nuclear weapons from 5,000 to 1,500, and the Japan Treaty, and all sorts of things. The Intermediate Nuclear Force Treaty, they've all been signed and carried out and obeyed. So now we want something that covers the whole thing. See, does anybody else?
I'm sorry, Mike, but it's
this
is really obvious. The U.S. and Russia and China and Britain and France, and I'm forgetting how many. I mean, let's not even talk about Pakistan and India. All these countries are not going to sign it. They say, no, we want our nuclear weapons. If you were here a little bit earlier, you would have heard Erica Simpson say that the guy that came and gave the best speech at her conference was a guy who gave a very coherent explanation for why deterrence is necessary and therefore why nuclear weapons are necessary. And it's convincing if you're open to being convinced by a thing like that, and they flatly will not do it. So it's very nice that you have this idea that the name of the game, our challenge, is to figure out how to make them do it.
I wonder if I could speak to Andre's and Michael's concerns a little bit. That the fact that in July 2017, the treaty to prohibit nuclear weapons was sort of signed by 122 countries, but this became official when the desired 50 of those countries, actually 54, ratified them, and their governments ratified them. And that happened on February 22nd of 2021. And so this is now an accepted international treaty that says that nuclear weapons are illegal. And the countries that sign are obligated not only to not have nuclear weapons or anything to do with nuclear energy, and anything to do with production or storage or nuclear weapons in ships going to their ports, all that kind of thing. And actually, an idea has been stated that elimination of nuclear weapons can be done more easily, actually, than the climate change. Things to do with climate change have to be done through Congress and the states and parliaments and so on. But for these 9 countries to agree, those countries are constructed so that the executives have power over war and peace and international affairs, much greater than they have over domestic affairs. And so if those actually few 9 leaders and the people right around them agreed to do it, it could be done.
My proposal is that we need the people in every country to unite, or none of this matters.
The thing that we need is what we had, during the freeze movement, a simple concept the peace activists of all stripes can get behind. We need something, and your suggestion that has come to my mind is simply the simple word stop, S-T-O-P, because we need to freeze not only all nuclear weapons, but also conventional weapons that are of great concern. And I think something like that might be just what we need. That's all.
Yeah, recently listened to the recordings of a 2-day conference put on by a Torontonian whose panelists included members of the Pentagon, the American and Canadian military, and NATO, and their subject was what the military is doing to address climate change. And I was quite intrigued with what I heard. And I'd be interested to hear any rebuttals on this, because it's. I heard, for example, that the Pentagon, not only AOC and the left wing of the Democratic Party, really pushed to have Biden appoint John Kerry as a guru on climate change. These 3 different aspects of the military, the American, the Canadian, and NATO, have all evidently determined that their number one priority is national security, which includes addressing climate change. I heard a number of people talk about something called multiplier threats. As climate change gathers momentum and threatens people, we've got all sorts of additional things like cultural and social instability, and the potential for outbreak of war of one kind or another that has to be mitigated in some way. Migration issues, and of course the ways in which the military is so frequently called in to help first responders when there's a natural disaster like a flood or a wildfire or something of that sort. So I certainly got the impression from listening to that conference, the conference recordings, that there are a lot of ways in which the military itself is trying to convert to renewable energy. I also had heard 1 or 2 speakers indicate that they were not in favor of nuclear, like small nuclear reactors as a source of renewable energy.
The first inkling I got of it was about 10 years ago when Gwynn Dyer was here and gave a talk. And he said that he's a specialist on military affairs. He writes about military matters. And he said that what got him into it was by going to the Pentagon. And he said, you talk to anybody in the Pentagon and they're really onto this.
Yes,
they're
exactly.
worried about it. Often they're thinking in terms of this is a security threat, in that when some of these effects of global warming begin to really bite and have big effects, it means that there are going to be conflicts and wars over water and over who gets to immigrate and all these other conflicts. And the military is going to have to come in and fight or do something to bring peace or stability to the situation. And so in anticipating these kinds of conflicts, they think it's their business to figure out what they have to do to prevent it.
That's the book by Gwynn Dyer that Etta is talking about.
Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
We've touched on climate change. What do people propose as an alternative to fossil fuels? And everybody agrees we have to do away with fossil fuels. And is that what you said?
Wind and solar.
Yes.
Renewables.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the first.
The technology evidently is advanced to the point where a lot of this can be stored for when the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining.
Every weekday, I do a talk show, and it's about an hour long, and I've done at least 10 about this very question. And the most recent ones are with a man mostly named Michael Barnard in British Columbia, who is a very sophisticated technologist. He knows all kinds of stuff. And so we've had several shows about such things as hydrogen storage and so on. The most promising of which was a recent one about pumping water for storage. And I had no idea that such a thing was could be done on a large scale. But he says there's really no problem with storage because water pumping is a very well developed technology that is extremely well known and
Yes.
can be done at a reasonable price, and we can store any amount of energy that we want to by pumping water uphill and let it run downhill again when we want it to.
Yes.
So that is the most promising solution. And he says there's no problem anymore.
Wind will not be feasible until the price comes down by a factor of 10. And my own calculations were about the same. That is because sometimes.
What do you mean wind will not be feasible? Wind is already cheaper than.
No, we're not talking about cheaper. Wind is 6 times cheaper than nuclear. I know that. It's 4 cents a kilowatt versus 25. It's 6 times cheaper to generate. But it is not at all cheap to store. It's the storage, like somebody was saying. Storage is the big problem.
Yeah,
so
but
if
it's
you have
not
a friend
a problem
that knows
anymore.
the cost of storage,
It's not. You talk to somebody, you talk to anybody who's a real expert on storage, and they're going to tell you it is handled. This is not a problem. We can store it and sell it as cheap as any other source of fossil fuel energy.
well, if you could send me a reference to
I
did.
You didn't read it.
Did you?
I'll send you the links.
Send me again, please, because I don't remember getting it.
I'll put the links up that I've done. By the way, those of you who want to get access to things right away, we have a new digital version of the magazine, so people can subscribe and immediately get it after the first of the month every time. And so you can subscribe to it and get a digital copy at the same price as the paper copy. But the beautiful thing about digital is it'll go everywhere in the world. If you happen to be in Yemen, you can download it. So, you might want to look at that. You go to Press Reader. It's called Press Reader, is the company that handles those digital copies of the magazine. The article that we did with Bahran, we had to go to press eventually, but he said it was right in the middle of something that was going on. So we got it updated as much as we could, but probably some more things have happened in the last week that would we need to update here, but I don't know how to do it because he's not around and I don't know the full story about it. But if anybody knows what's gone on in Yemen in the last 4 or 5 days, this would be the time to share it.
Yeah, you see, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, you think that I would know about it, but I don't.
Well, okay, I understand now. Got it. Okay, who else wants to speak about something that we haven't covered already before? Okay, what's going on in Vukovar, Croatia?
Well, it's what's going on in the whole world. First of all, I want to thank this group for connecting Joseph and me, because we're doing 2 groups a week.
Wonderful. Joseph Sampaia, is that right? Joseph Sampaia is doing it? Or somebody else?
No, Joseph is marvelous with this. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay.
And we're doing 2 groups in Burundi. And we're beginning to do some groups in other parts of Africa. And I just got a request yesterday, actually, to do, would you believe, a group of Uyghurs in Australia.
Really?
Uyghur refugees. So that should be quite amusing. And yeah. Okay. And we've gotten 2 requests to work, and this will probably be within the next couple of months, starting with work on child soldiers in Congo. People working with child soldiers in Congo and in Burundi. So I don't know. Again, amusing stuff.
Okay, you got funny taste and humor, but there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's me. You know, by the way, I don't know if people are aware that yesterday was the International Day for Victims of Torture. And today is the International Day of PTSD. And last Saturday was the International Day for the Victims of Sexual Violence. And last Sunday was International Migrant Day. So there have been a lot of commemorations recently. Very difficult material to work with, obviously. The same thing, unfortunately, the situation with regard to migrants in the Mediterranean is as bad as it has been. The European, so I think people are beginning to sue Frontex, which is the European Union Border Agency. They're beginning to take them to the international courts, which I hope will succeed, obviously, because what we're hearing from places like particularly Libya, but also Malta, Italy, Spain, is not good at all. And of course, the situation right here in Bosnia, the Croatians are being dreadful at both the Serbian border and at the Bosnian border, with the very violent pushbacks, a lot of people dying. So we've got our hands full. We're seeing a great deal of transgenerational transmission of trauma, and it goes on for quite a number of generations. We are now at 30 years after the start of the wars here in the Balkans. There's been a recent study that has said that the children have more prejudices than their parents, because this has not been dealt with in the Balkans. If you must deal with those previous traumas. We have clients who are dealing with 4 and 5 generations of war trauma.
I'm not going to give you any leeway, Paul Copeland. I want you to tell us what's going on in Myanmar.
It's horrible, is what's going on. There's fighting going on. The last I saw, which was a couple of days ago, there were 1,000 people that had been killed and lots of people imprisoned. Aung San Suu Kyi still on trial, in the secret trial. And there's been a fair bit of repression of the lawyers there. I've actually had the Law Society of Ontario put out a couple of statements about the mistreatment of lawyers. But somehow when they've managed to put them out, they managed to put them out and create no publicity at all. I'm following things fairly closely, and I'm sending out a lot of stuff that comes in. Particularly, there's the stuff that comes in from a guy named Steve Ross every day.
Is there any danger to the people who do report it from Myanmar?
Some of them have been arrested.
You have to understand the causes, the root causes of a situation, and I think that's where women come in as creating peace much better than we men, because we men tend to look at things on a superficial level, and the women look at the root causes. And so when they solve a problem, it's much longer lasting.
I don't know if that's true or not. I think I caused more fights than I solved.
We are not dealing with men. And this is an essential aspect. We've done some of it, but men have, first of all, as many emotions as women do, if not more, and they hide them and they are ashamed of them. And so we have to give permission to men to speak about their emotions.
I even find men more attractive if they're expressive. We can start a whole conversation here about what kind of people we think of, with warmth. And I like men who are expressive, and sometimes they're a little over the top, but those are the people I like. So there.
But strong, silent type, and listen.
Just you? you're a strong silent type, not an expressive type.
And anyway,
Too bad.
anyway, you exposed me. To others, I'm a Rotarian living in Connecticut.
Right. We're getting toward the end, but I'd still like to get. Now, here's Joseph. Come on, say something, Joseph. I don't think you can hear me either. Well, no. Okay.
Gandhi and King have quotes that are, everyone's always telling us their the quotes of Gandhi and King.
Mm-hmm.
But they said it the best, that nonviolence heals and restores man's nature, that it's creates good things. So that's why I promote it, that there's a power there. And that's what all the efforts that everyone here in this conversation are talking about, the good things that they're doing, but it all comes together under the umbrella of nonviolence. If we
last week I did a conversation with a guy who Beer, Michael Beer.
Michael Beers.
No, Michael Beer has a new book out now. This is a good place to kind of promote it because Gene Sharp wrote a book many years ago now. It was 1970, I think about 1970. It's not exact. That's not exact date, but at any rate, a long time ago, the Politics of Nonviolence, and it was the first really extensive study of the history of nonviolent movements. And it was an amazing piece of work, which actually he continued throughout his life. And he only died a year, maybe 2 years ago, a little less than that. So this book has not been updated all that time. And so Michael Beer, who's not a scholar, he said, he's not an academic, but he tried to get other people to update the book by bringing in more of the history of things that have happened since the book was written. And he couldn't get anybody to do it, so he did it himself. And so it's available, and you can even download it for free. I think if you go to Nonviolence International, there's a way to find out how to get it for free.
The new narrative, commit to nonviolence and commit to working together for humanity. That's what we're all doing here on this webinar. So that's part of the narrative.
The Canadian Voice of Women for Peace always indicate that they're also for social justice. So that's one group of women that would promote the kinds of, I think, perspectives on peace that you're offering.
We'll come back the last Sunday in July. And we will have another go at getting up to date on what has been going on in the world and how we can fix it.
One quick thing. I would urge anybody who hasn't read him to read the work of Johan Galtung.
Okay.
From Norway. He speaks about positive and negative peace, and he speaks about nonviolent conflict transformation. He is absolutely excellent on all of this stuff. And so I would say that's Peace Building 101.
Yeah, that's right. And he's been doing it a long time. We're both a little long in the tooth, and he's no spring chicken himself.
And finally, war is just plain stupid. The winners lose, let alone the losers.
All right. Bless your heart, everybody. Thank you for showing up, and have a good month. We'll see you in another month. Bye-bye.
Love.
Bye.
Thank you.